Hi, all. I'm Erica Tannen, the owner of the E-List, a weekly lifestyle newsletter and blog about the best of the Connecticut shoreline. I started this company with an idea and a laptop and turned it into a six-figure business. I'm going to talk about some of the things I've learned along the way, and then if you have questions, I'm happy to talk about anything you'd like because I have a long history of entrepreneurship. I had my first retail store when I was in college, and I've been at it, I guess, 40 years. It's shocking. So it's my 12th anniversary next week, and I think folks who have been reading the E-List for a long time see a linear path to success. But that's not true at all because I threw a lot of spaghetti at the wall and made a lot of mistakes that I learned a lot from and just kept going. So what I'm hoping to do today is provide you with 10 tips for growing your business. So the first thing is sort of boring. It's a mission statement, but I think it's really important. And if you don't have a mission statement for your business, it's a good thing to think about and to really define how you want to present yourself to your audience. For me, the mission of the E-List is to improve the lives of women on the shoreline. Certainly I have some male readers, but really I'm focused on women. And having that mission statement has guided my goals for the E-List. So if an opportunity arises, I sifted through the mission statement to see that it aligns with my goals for the business. Oftentimes it helps me make decisions for opportunities or directions that I may go in because everything has to be within the mission of improving the lives of women on the shoreline. There's a couple of mission statements. One thing I could suggest is if you don't have a mission for your business is look at some similar businesses. Since COVID, I've been like a Peloton freak and it saved my life. And I like their mission statement, which is Peloton uses technology and design to connect the world through fitness, empowering people to be the best version of themselves anywhere, anytime. And that really sort of sums it up, what they try to do. And I think it's geared to their audience and explains what their mission is. I also really like this one from Everlane, which is a direct-to-consumer clothing company. We believe we can all make a difference our way. Exceptional quality, ethical factories, radical transparency. So the mission statement really is a guide for you and an explanation of your business, sort of an elevator explanation for your targeted audience. The next boring subject I have, and then I'll get into way more fun things, is business plans and budgets. So many smaller entrepreneurs don't create a business plan. And I think it may be out of fear, but a business plan will force you to consider all the aspects of your business before you dive in completely. And they're very simple. There are templates in SBA, there are templates, you can just Google it. There are a million simple templates for a business plan. And it just makes you really aware of every facet of your business. And what I do is I create a business plan and a budget for the year. And then I create individual budgets for special events. Like I was talking to Sammy about our Insane and Sidewalk sale, which is a big event that I throw every year. We collect 25 vendors under one roof who sell their merchandise at close to wholesale prices. And for that, every year I create a budget for it. And then I go back and I put onto the budget the actual costs so that I can look year to year and decide what worked and what didn't. And it gives me a very strong history of pointing me in the right direction for future Insane and Sidewalk sales. So I think that's a very important thing. And it's super easy to do a budget. It's super easy to do a business plan. And it's not to be ignored if you're serious about growing your business. I also keep a very close eye on my expenses in general, and I don't borrow money for my business. This is sort of a conflicting topic. It's just my way, having in the past borrowed lots of money for a business and felt strangled by loans. I got my way out of it, but with the E-List, I've never borrowed money, and I put aside profits so that when opportunities or emergencies arise, I have the ability to confront those. Last week, for example, my server failed and I publish the e-list every single week and I have advertising every single week. And it cost me $2,000 for my webmasters to fix it. And if I didn't have that $2,000, I would have lost my advertising for the week. I would have disappointed my community. And so I was lucky that I have the money to do these kinds of things. Also, it's seeing me through this period of COVID when my business is down 50%. So I don't have the flexibility that I normally would have with staffing. I've had to let go of a lot of my staffing and I've had to really rein in my expenses, but it's allowing me to stay in business because I've developed this cushion. So I highly recommend that. The third thing is competition. Who is doing what you do in your space? Is there room for more? Ask yourself if what you're providing doesn't currently exist or is somehow different than what is already out there. You need to differentiate yourself from the competition and you really need to study the competition and see what they're doing. When I started my shop in Chester, I opened a clothing store a year ago March. So it was a full year when I was closed for COVID. I intentionally bought brands that were not available elsewhere. I checked out the competition and I wanted to have a very distinct point of view in my retail store that was unlike anything out there. Number one, I didn't want to compete with people I know most of these retailers, they're my friends. I want to feel a part of the community and not compete with them, but I also wanted to have a very distinct point of view. So I think really checking out your competition is very important. Here's one of my favorites. Don't forget the invitations. I always say if you're not actively marketing your work or business all the time, you're throwing a party and forgetting to send the invitations. It's interesting to me, especially being in the business of selling ads, how many small business people and creatives don't provide a marketing budget for themselves. And I hear very often, I don't have the money for advertising, I don't have the time for social media, or I don't have the money also to boost social media posts. There are so many people, certainly within this community, that make beautiful, useful, wonderful things. The problem is getting them to the consumer. And so marketing should be as much a part of your business as creating whatever product you have is. It just cannot be ignored. If you don't have money set aside for marketing, I'm sort of like, shut the doors. It's really such a key piece. And I think one of the most important parts actually of being in business. I think it's important too to figure out who your market is and find the vehicle or media that is targeted directly to them. When you allocate your annual budget, then you may want to say, I'm going to spend this much on the e-list, for example, or Facebook, or boosting Instagram posts. You can do all this, of course, by demographic, and it's all very simple. A couple of people who I think in the creative world do it really well have built huge Instagram followings so that they are really on, so they're really making most of their money on their Instagram platforms, are Mary McGuire Art, and it's MAGUIRE. If you want to look at her Instagram, I think she does an amazing job and she's selling a lot of art. Jill Rosenwald Pottery also, or it's maybe Jill Rosenwald Ceramics. She has a very beautiful, consistent Instagram feed and also has developed a huge following and sells quite a bit on Instagram. It's not an easy thing to do. I know that. It's a really hard thing to do, but I think the consistency with the marketing is very important. The next one, that's marketing. Old dogs can learn new tricks. Voila, that's me. So I pivoted from a background in fashion to digital marketing. And I did this at what, how old am I? I don't even want to say, but I did this at around 48 years old. And when I started the e-list, I didn't know a thing about websites, platforms, social media. There was very little social media. Facebook had just started, or even Photoshop. Through conferences and webinars and online learning, I learned what I needed to know about my platform. And weirdly, I really enjoyed it. So I think a lot of what you need to do in your industry, whatever the industry is, it applies, is keep learning. I'm always learning something new, and I'm not afraid of technology. I think, you know, my daughter's age group, millennials, they're not afraid of technology. This is what they grew up on. But women my age especially tend to fear technology. And I always say the internet is not going away. So you have to embrace technology. The next thing I'd like to talk to you about is, my daughter hates this. She's probably gonna start screaming. Stick-to-itiveness. This is one of my favorite words. At the beginning of the E-List, a friend of mine who was also a mentor said that I'd have to have 10,000 subscribers before I could attract advertisers. And I thought, that's an interesting thing to say. So how long is it going to take me to get to 10,000 subscribers, email subscribers? So that was my goal. And I just did everything in my power to get subscribers. I didn't pay attention to trying to sell ads. I paid a lot of attention to my content and made sure that it was really strong and well written. And otherwise, I was just geared to getting subscribers. And the way I got my email subscribers was by launching events. So I would do girls' nights out that you may have heard of in some of the local towns. And I would get all the emails from that. The Insane and Sidewalk sale that I spoke about, I get 1,500 emails from that. Every year I do a best of the Shoreline readers poll. Now everyone does it, but I like to say I was there first. And I get tons of emails from that. So I've even gone to farmers markets and stood there flagging people down and asking them if they've ever heard of the E-List. So I just had this one goal. I'm going to get to 10,000. And frankly, I think at about 8,500 is when I was actively selling out of advertising. So I had created a product that was in such demand that I could sell out my weekly newsletter. We actually even increased it for a while to 2 a week just to accommodate the demand. I think it took about 3 years to get there, and I just wouldn't quit because I saw the growth. If I hadn't seen weekly growth in my email subscriber base, I probably would have quit. But I kept thinking, I'm at 1,000. I'm at 2,000, I'm at 2,500. And it was sort of an exciting way to grow to the business. So it's not only the stick-to-itiveness, but also to have a very specific goal in mind when you're trying to grow your business. Now we have 25,000 subscribers. And I'm still looking for ways to increase that number. It's a little bit harder now because I'm sort of maxed out, but I'm always looking for ways to increase that number. The more subscribers I have, the more I can charge for advertising. So that's how I look at stick-to-itiveness. On the other end, don't stick your head in the sand. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this thing called hoping and praying that things will change. And things always change. The environment is always shifting. Currently, all of us are dealing with something completely unprecedented. I can't even say the word, it's used so many times. But you have to be realistic about your next step if your business is either stagnating or going in the wrong direction. I think, for example, a retail store, that might mean canceling orders or pushing off deliveries. For a service business, it could mean increasing your marketing efforts or spending more time on social media. In restaurants or a food business, it could mean creating new menu items and really looking at your Yelp reviews and your Facebook reviews and just being very conscious of communicating with your customer and trying to figure out what they want. You just can't sit there and hope that things will get better. We had an interesting situation every year at the Insane and Sidewalk sale, we charge for admission. I've gathered 25 stores. I pay rent, I pay the staff, I pay for advertising, and it's a very expensive thing to pull off. And people always fight me a bit. There's always some discord about the $5 admission. It's only $5, but every year it surprises me how many people fight. about it. And so what we do at the desk is say, we'll take your $5. If you want it back at the end, we'll give it back to you. And then if there's any Facebook conversation, which there generally is, I try to be very transparent and just say, I can't charge these vendors any more than I'm charging them because they're already selling their merchandise at such a low price. So I have to charge this admission to have this really fun and exciting event that's great for the community. And I think in general, just being transparent about whatever your situation is and not sticking your head in the sand when things go awry is a very, you have to swiftly take action. I think that's all I'm trying to say there. Knowing when to quit. Okay, this is the hard part. This is the failure part. And sometimes the best thing for your business is to just stop doing it. So this happened to me this year. I had opened a retail store in conjunction with the E-List in Chester, and I loved my store. It was like a little dream of a store. We started off with such a huge bang. It was well beyond the goals that I set. And exactly a year to the day, COVID happened. I opened mid-March a year ago, and then mid-March this year, COVID happened. I had just received all my spring collections, and I had paid for them all. And I knew I'm gonna get stuck with this merchandise. My sales went down 85%, and I had a very robust online platform, but people like to shop in the store. So I was just like, what do I do? I had $60,000 worth of merchandise on order for fall that I would be responsible for paying for if I didn't cancel those orders by the end of April. So I'm reading about what's going on with fashion, and I'm thinking, who's gonna buy cashmere sweaters and silk dresses in the fall? And I was just like, I can't risk it. And as hard as it was to make that decision, it was probably the best business decision I ever made. I closed the store and I saved myself $60,000. I managed to sell off my inventory for spring at pretty much what it cost me, but I came out clean. So it was a sad thing, but you have to know when to quit. You have to be realistic about it. And before I get to my secret weapons, I'm going to tell you this one. Do what scares you. The only reason I'm here today is I really hate public speaking. And it really scares me. I get very nervous about it, but I improve every single time I do it. So I make myself accept invitations like this one. It's an important skill for me to have for my business. And if there are skills that you feel uncomfortable about that are important for your business, identify them, practice them, and do them because you will feel a lot more comfortable. I practiced this several times today and, changed it around a bit, but I think the practice part is key, at least for me. And then what I want to share with you to finish up is like some of the secret weapons that I use. And these tips and tricks won't apply to all of you, pick and choose, but this is sort of my arsenal of things that I use. I use Evernote all the time for productivity. I put everything, ideas, marketing, new launches, events, sometimes in individual notebooks in Evernote, and sometimes I just throw it in there because you can search by any word and it'll find what you're looking for. I have years worth of Evernotes and I can always find what I'm looking for. I find it to be the best productivity tool. I use CoSchedule because I'm a blogger, right? So CoSchedule is an editorial calendar that helps me plan out what I'm going to write about. And for some of you, it might be very useful as a social media calendar because you can also plan out all your social media on CoSchedule. You might want to check that out. My platform for my blog is WordPress. I've also used Squarespace. I think Squarespace is a little more user-friendly. You could probably start right up. If you don't have a website, you could probably start yourself off with Squarespace. WordPress has the ability to have tons and tons of plugins. So if you're planning on selling something online, that might be a better way to go. I currently use Dreamscapes Design Group in Essex. They are my webmasters. They saved my ass this week when my server went down. So they also do a great job designing websites if you're in the market for that. And they also are experts with Shopify. So if you're selling a product and you need to integrate it with your website, they're experts with Shopify, which is one of the strongest platforms for Photoshop. I mean, I know basics. I don't know a lot. I can restyle, I can recover, I can do, I can make it clearer. I can do a bunch of things on Photoshop. Lucky for me, I have a graphic designer, my sidekick, Laura, who really is the other half of my business, who does most of the Photoshop. She's a genius. But I think just like the basic skill set of Photoshop for anyone who has to take pictures is important. For apps on our iPhones for pictures, we use Lightroom and we use the Light and Airy presets. And what I like about Light and Airy, and that it's called Light and Airy, it's a company, it gives us sort of a consistent look in our pictures. And it just like lightens them up, brightens them up, makes them look happy. I think it's good for branding. It may not be the one for you, but within Lightroom, there are lots of presets. If you need to add type to a photo or to an image and you want to do it on the fly and you don't want to go into Photoshop, I use WordSwag and Typorama. And so these images you can use for Instagram, you can use them for, obviously for email. You can't really use them for Facebook because Facebook, I think, limits your text to 20% of the image, which is almost nothing. But you can make really fun images with WordSwag and Typorama. They're both apps for iPhone. If you're looking for inexpensive branding or logos, check out Fiverr. They do, you can look at everybody's portfolio so you can see, you can really sort of match your design sense to somebody else's and see, you can choose your graphic designer based on what they do. I've used it a bunch and it's so cheap. It's crazy that if you're looking for inexpensive branding, that's a good place to start. I read Social Media Examiner for any social media tips and tricks that are coming down the pike. There's a huge amount of information on this website. I get their newsletter. Facebook is always changing their rules. Instagram is always changing their rules. There are lots of rules surrounding contests, which I tend to do quite a bit. And you have to know what the rules are. So if you need some social media training, I would say that's a good place to start. I also use Skillshare for online classes. I've learned a bunch about Photoshop on Skillshare. It's like an annual, I think it's an annual subscription, and you can take classes in anything. I mean, knitting, whatever, but I use that quite a bit. I also use Grammarly. I sift all of my writing. I write all the time, almost every day, and I put it all in Grammarly just to make sure my punctuation, my sentence structure is all correct. I'm also really competitive, and they give you a grade. So I love it. I'm like, ooh, I got a 99. That's awesome. So I love Grammarly. If you're a writer or do any blogging, that's a good one. Linktree is something I've just discovered. Actually, my designers told me about it. I tend to need more than one link on Instagram. We all put link in bio. And I need more than one link because I have a link for my weekly newsletter, then I have a link to my blog, and then sometimes I'll be running a contest or doing Best of the Shoreline, and I'll need another link. If you sign on to Linktree, you'll be able to put a number of links in your bio instead of just one. They come up like a little block, and it's very clean and easy. So that's me, and that's what I do. And thanks so much for listening. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
The Linktree, where do you use it again?
I use Linktree. I think it's only for Instagram.
Okay, thank you.
So you go onto Linktree and you sign on to your Instagram account and you add it to your Instagram account. It's like $5 a month, I think, roughly.
Okay, so you can have more than one link. So if you have more than one shop, more than one Etsy shop, you can put that in. You
can put them all in. It's so great. You can have just name them individually what they are. Like mine says, this week's newsletter. I think I have this week's newsletter, the e-list, and then I also have a subscribe button. Subscribe to the e-list. So that's good. People want to hear from you. It's a great way to also collect emails. Never stop collecting those emails.
Erica, actually, I use Linktree, and like I have two different link trees, and on my like professional one, I have all my links to my profession, and then on I'm part of like a pay it forward group for Amazon. So I have like all my different wish lists on there, and you can send them to anywhere. So you can send the link to anything. It doesn't just have to be on Instagram too. So I like that because you can send it in email blasts as well.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's great to know.
The Lightroom app, is that like mock-ups that you put your product in, or?
The Lightroom app is really an Adobe. It's part of Photoshop. So it is like Photoshop for your phone, really. And then the light and airy presets you have to install on Lightroom. It's a little teeny bit complicated, but not horrible.
Okay. Is it like a filter or for your photos?
Yes, yes. The light and airy presets are filters, and the Lightroom is really like Photoshop for your phone.
Okay, thank you.
It's actually, Lightroom is a desktop application as well, but they do have it for the phone. It's a photo editing app. Mm-hmm. So it's really good for like if you have like probably what Erica uses it for, and correct me if I'm wrong, Erica, is like if you have like darker photos or ones that you just want to kind of like fix the lighting or a little bit, like the light and airy like sort of add-ons to that program help you take like sort of dark or maybe grainy photos and just lighten them up without you having to like go in and kind of like do it manually and do a lot of like guesswork.
It just takes all that, you know, Photoshop.
So does anyone here use Snapseed yet?
I do.
What do you think of it?
Oh, pardon?
What do you think of it?
I use it all the time for Instagram, and it's free.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was recommended to me by a group of Etsy sellers that I belong to.
Okay.
I've gone through a lot of them. I used VSCO for a long time. I don't know. I just feel like the light and airy thing is so simple. And for me, it's not for everyone. It's sort of part of the way we brand now. So you can choose the preset that works best for you. I think it's really a good idea. I know when I was on VSCO, there were like 3 filters that I used consistently so that most of my images would have sort of a consistent look.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of really good apps like that. I talked about some of them too in my marketing presentation earlier today. The one that I use a lot is A Color Story, and it's similar to the way that Lightroom works. You can save, you know, so if like you do, if you want like all of your images to look consistent, you can kind of save your settings so that every time you bring in an image, you just click on one button and it applies those settings.
Right.
And automatically edits it. I'm sure you can do that with Lightroom too. I honestly don't use Lightroom that much. I use Photoshop more, but when I'm on my phone.
What's it called? A Color Story?
Yeah, it's called A Color Story. I'll put it in the chat and I'll find the link for it.
Sammy, I know that you can do that on Lightroom on the desktop. I've never used Lightroom on the phone, but I know that if you have like a specific like brightness, shadows, thing like, and anything that you change, you can save it as a preset in Lightroom. So yes. Like if you have like a specific one, like if I were doing like my website, I would like just name it Rachel Balone or whatever, and then I can click on it and apply it to everything, just like a light and airy preset.
Yeah. Yep. So A Color Story, you can do that too, and they have. It's free, it's for your phone. And then they also have Lightroom presets too, I think, that they sell separately. And they also have a design one called a design something. I just talked about it this morning too, and I can't remember.
What's that for?
Here, I have your packet out.
Oh, good. I don't use it that much because I honestly use a design kit.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's another one. It's like a Canva. I forget the ones that you use, Erica. But it's another one for like if you want to add like words on top of your, you know, images or put in backgrounds or things like that. Another thing for your phone. I'll find the design.
Yeah, I have a standalone graphics program that's exceptionally old. It's called Photo Impact. I don't know that anyone's ever heard of it. I love Photo Impact. It's what I use, but I also have another thing on my desktop called On One Photo. I think they're up to On One Photo Raw 2021 or something. And that's actually for professional photographers. And I use that because there's a couple of tools in it that I really, really like. But mostly what I'm doing is photographing my art. So it's a little bit different. And I refuse to pay Photoshop anything. Besides, I love my Photo Impact. That's one of the reasons I'm keeping Windows 7.
Erica, I might have missed this, but are these tools that you're using yourself, or are you often delegating out these tasks? What do you have a strategy for that, and to know like when,
Well,
you're
Laura
full?
and we're only 2 people now. Our team is really minimal, and we used to be, I think, 5. So Laura's been my key person, and she's much more involved in the graphics. But very often I need to do something on the fly, and that's why I take the easy way out with like Typorama or WordSwag. She's much more, she has a facility with Photoshop that I don't have, and Illustrator and all kinds of lovely programs that I just haven't taken a deep dive in. So a bit of both. We work really sort of hand in hand.
Erica?
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It's about niches. In the description, it said you'll be talking about how to select a niche which is not saturated. Could you talk a little bit about that?
I think, sure, I'd love to talk about that. I think finding a niche that's not saturated, first of all, I think what happens with a creative mind in general is you have an idea, and you're either going to make something, you're going to write something, you're going to open a retail store. So you have an idea. And no matter how great that idea is, I think what I touched on is that you really have to do your research in the competition and make sure that that niche is available to you and is available in the market that you're considering, whether it's online or local or whatever. So it's a combination, I would say, of what your plan is and what you want to do, and really scouring the market and checking out the competition for what people are currently doing, and then fine-tuning what you do so that you can present something else, so that you can take a different angle, or that you can have a very specific point of view that is not currently available. Does that sort of answer your question?
So does this apply to services also? Like, I'm a financial coach, right? There are tons of financial coach.
Totally it applies. Totally it applies. Yes, especially to services. You're a financial coach that could differentiate yourself by dealing with, for example, divorced women, or dealing with...
That's what I do.
So there you go. Or dealing with 25-year-olds who are just starting to put together their portfolios.
But how do you decide that? Is working with divorced women better, or 25-year-olds who need help with their portfolio? That's the thing. Like in the beginning of your business stage, how do you decide that? Or how do you know what's in the market?
That's when you look at the market and look at the competition. If there are so many people in your area providing that service already, it's going to be hard to break into that market. If there are very few people, it will be easier. And then there's also the passion piece, right? So if you prefer to deal with 25-year-olds, you're going to be better at it, right? So I think it's a combination of both.
So when I tell my story, it relates, like people who are divorced relate with it, because in my story, I say how I got 2 marriages, 2 divorces, how I got out of it. So that's how when I say the story, divorced people or whatever relate to it, but it doesn't mean that I won't be able to help a 25-year-old. Or if I, in my messaging, say divorced women, then will a 25-year come to me or say, no, I'm not in this divorce
it's hard
category?
to deal with such a specific industry, but the experience that I've had, especially when we sell advertising, because we sell advertising on the e-list to people like you, and we had somebody who was very geared to just helping women develop their portfolio. I can't remember if it was specifically divorced women, but her messaging was very specific and very much about how she felt about helping women. I think for you, I mean, I can't speak to every industry on this, but I think for you, it's not necessarily that you're going to not attract that 25-year-old, but I do think you need to find your niche and stick with it. And then people, through word of mouth, will say, wow, she was so great for me. Maybe my daughter should use her.
Okay. Yeah, and I've also written a book, Pandemic Budgeting and Finances, how
That's
to
a good
use
one.
piggy banks and stop counting sheep.
Good for you. That's great. You got that together fast.
This is like,
Suzanne,
yeah,
you still have a
anybody can use.
question? Suzanne, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Do you still have a question?
Yeah, Erica, do you use YouTube at all?
Sort of like my public speaking problem. I do use YouTube, and you will see a few YouTubes under the E-list. And we've got a couple of good ones. We've got some from Girls Nights Out. We have some from the Insane and Sidewalk Sale. Everybody I know, including my daughter, I see her shaking her head, is like, you've got to do more YouTube. You've got to do more YouTube. It's just, people love video. They adore video. They adore images. It's just not my jam. That's all I have to say about that. I should do more, for sure.
Get your daughter to do one for you.
She lives in New York. She would, though. She's good.
That doesn't matter. She knows your product.
Yeah.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Anybody else?
Is anyone who hasn't had a chance to talk, ask a question? We're about to wrap up in about 10-ish minutes.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anyone, Erica, have you or your daughter ever used Patreon?
You mean the fundraising?
It's not fundraising. It's
donations,
exactly,
right? It's donations typically.
If you're at a, yeah, there's different levels where if
It's
you're
like a subscription platform,
yes.
correct?
Right. Yeah, it's like subscription boxes.
Yeah, it doesn't really apply to me because my product is free.
Right.
The E-list is a free newsletter. Anyone can sign up for it. My revenue stream has been advertising and the events that I do.
Okay, I was wondering if it was for your stores in the past or whatever, but okay.
Susan?
No,
Suzanne,
I've never
have you
used it.
Patreon?
I mean, I guess I always think of it as something that artists and musicians use. It doesn't really apply to me, but I think a lot of people use the platform.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody who hasn't gotten a chance to ask a question? Silence.
Silence. I think we're good then.
That's good. It means everybody got to say what they want to say, right?
Erica, I cannot believe that you are afraid of public speaking.
Right.
That is so mind-boggling to me.
I know, isn't it? I'm in front of people all the time, but it's just, I don't know. It's just, it's my thing. But I'm getting better at it. How did I do today? How was it?
Did great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I always learn so much from you, Erica. Thank you.
Very
I like how clear everything is.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Well, thank you all. It was really fun. Nice to meet you all. And what a great event you